Hey guys, today we have a look at the very, mundane part of the practice that the Buddha laid out. While 95% or more of all his talks and lectures directly dealt with virtue or with all sorts of suffering, there were also some quite mundane pieces of advice sprinkled in from time to time. Today we learn all about those things that very early beginners and practitioners can also do to make way for the real practice. But first, when asked what connects the noble disciple and the unenlightened worldling, the Buddha said, diligent effort, or in other words, you must really try hard to transcend your state of an ordinary worldling. So whatever we do, it requires effort, and any mundane activity that trains our discipline is a bonus that makes the actual Dhamma practice easier than before. While some people teach a type of easy or simple meditation, the Buddha never did that. He was quite open about the fact that his practice requires a lot of effort and dedication and is only for those who are determined to make an end of suffering. Without that determination, that may your blood dry up, may your bones crumble or something like that, without that kind of determination, it is very unlikely that any person will make an end to suffering. It kind of has to be the most important thing to you. But to follow something with that vigor, you need some prior training, as the entire training and practice that the Buddha laid out is a gradual one. And with that out of the way, we can start with several practices that the Buddha also advised. And I'm not talking about the one sutta where he told his monks to brush their teeth regularly. Essentially, we are analyzing 7 topics that I have identified in the suttas. The Buddha was very vocal about the fact that he only teaches those things that are at least assistance when it comes to the eradication of suffering. He simply remained silent when someone asked something without benefit. Yet, when no advanced practitioners were nearby, he also taught very early steps. And now let us begin with some information about personal finances, where the Buddha sometimes gave quite modern and quite detailed advice. Most of the time, the Buddha taught either to seasoned ascetics or to comparably rich people, which is interesting. And this is no accident, as those people can at least know by heart that sensuality is a dead end. After all, they have tried, and they are not happy yet. A person who is poor often sees other rich people and thinks, if only I could have that lifestyle, then all my problems would go away. And I can speak there from experience. Maybe there were other poor people who did not think that, but when I was very young and very poor, I was thinking like that. I was envying other people for their riches, and this is not a very nice state to be in. And you are quite convinced that only if you had all those things, your unhappiness would be gone. While this is not true, while it is nearly impossible to tell a person that his striving for money will not lead anywhere, and I would very much advise against telling people to stop wanting money, as an example. They will see for themselves once they have some money. It will not bring them happiness. This is just a natural law, but they have to see for themselves. Let people see that wealth is not giving you what you ultimately desire, and in many cases it must be experienced like with the divine messenger events that the Buddha was talking about. And the next thing the Buddha was talking about, apart from personal finances, are health and mental health. Because without health and mental health, practice is nearly impossible. You want to have a mind that is neither too depressed nor too elated or fit to win the battle, as the Buddha was pointing out. For example, when you are facing depression and cannot conquer that state on your own, then by all means seek out therapy and try to get some help when facing problems that are too harsh to solve on your own. And then it is also a good idea to sleep well, even though the Buddha was talking about striving through the first, second, and third watch of the night. That is a lifestyle that you can do as a monk when you have nothing else to do. But as a layperson, having good sleep is essential. You want to do that to become, to enter a state where it is possible to have less sleep. But in the beginning, it is simply not the case. And the same is true for good nutrition. It is essential to have good health. And in that case, it is a very good idea to just eat in moderation, as an example. That is one of the biggest parts, if not the biggest part, when it comes to nutrition and health. Simply don't eat too much. That already covers 80% of everything that is connected to health. And then you also have to get everything else that you need and all the other things. And I have summarized all of that in the Self-Improvement Almanac, by the way, that I did way before I started with only Dhamma teachings on YouTube. And the Buddha even said that concentration, meditative concentration, is nearly impossible when sick. There were many cases in the suttas, as an example, of monks who fell away from concentration due to sickness and in the end even committed suicide. One example would be Nanaviratera, and many other Sutta monks were named who took the knife, which is not a blameless thing according to the Buddha unless you are an arahant with a terminal sickness. And people with certain mental illnesses, as an example, should not meditate and rarely really focus on virtue alone, as an example. That is still immensely beneficial for them, but the absorption, especially the absorption style meditations, are really not for them. And when it comes to contemplating anicca and all those things, it might not be the best idea for certain people who are very unstable and have an unstable mind. You need a very, very solid foundation of virtue before you move into those territories. And having good health and good mental health are both very much essential when it comes to paving the ground, doing the groundwork for all the other things that are necessary. And next comes a minimum amount of exercise and moderation. We have evolutionary duties. Some things have to be done. This includes breathing and sleeping and eating and shelter and drinking and medicine and provisions for the sick, as the Buddha was putting it. And it also includes exercise. You will get sick when you are not moving all day. And the Buddha also prescribed walking meditation to his monks. You can sit all day, that is possible, but your health will suffer. And the Buddha even named 4 or 5 benefits of doing walking meditation quite regularly. He also advised us to eat in moderation and only for sustenance of the body. And yeah, it's a very good idea to follow those examples. When you do not move, then your body will be weak and not suitable for thriving. And this is very important to keep in mind. You will also be unfit for journeys, your food will not agree with you, and many other things that come to mind when it comes to not eating in moderation, overconsumption, and all kinds of other diseases that are the result of those things. It is a good idea to eat in moderation, and only for the sustenance of the body, and not for pure enjoyment. And next, the Buddha talked a lot about instant gratification detoxes and fasts, to use modern terms. And yeah, gratification, the other that easy gratification are most beneficial things when it comes to modern practices. And there's a good reason for that. It is a bit like the uposatha that the Buddha was talking about, where the people were simply spending some time over the course of a month, when the full moon, half moon, and new moon, etc., took place, where they were not engaging in any kind of sensuality and were taking up the 8 precepts. They were doing regular instant gratification detoxes, which were very, very beneficial. And there are other practices that you can do too, like simply waiting 5 minutes before you allow yourself to engage in some kind of instant gratification-related behavior. Simply allow yourself to feel the pleasure that is connected to that kind of craving. And there are many other modern practices that aim at the very same thing. There's no magic about each individual practice. It is just about practices that show you the dependence on sensual pleasures, and they show you how it is actually painful. How they do that, it doesn't really matter. It is just that the result counts. And all of those practices really show you the sensual depth that you are accumulating early on and allow you to stop indulging too much. They help you not moving down the wrong direction too fast and too far. And they show you how good feelings hurt when they stop. And in regular stopping, you can see the painful nature of craving, which allows you to transcend it altogether. And a special case of instant gratification detoxes are catered towards the strongest human drive of survival, after survival, namely sexuality and celibacy. And the practice of at least temporary abstinence from sexual engagement can be very beneficial, but it is supremely unpopular because the modern, at least Western culture, very much revolves around sexuality and having a partner, marrying, and all those things. It is a culture that is very much focused around nothing but non-celibacy. And many of the religions of the West are very much like that, like Catholicism. It's a lot about, sexuality, even if religious people can be very prude and seem very non-sexual. The entire religion kind of revolves around that. Anyway, it is a very scary idea to renounce sexuality, at least for a while, because the sex drive is so deeply rooted, and no form is more enchanting than that of the opposite sex, for most people at least. Or no smell is more enchanting, no taste, no touch, no sound, no sight. All those things have been named by the Buddha, as nothing has a stronger grip on us than those forms and other sensual impressions. And monks and nuns even have special rules when it comes to sexuality to protect them from their own drives, because it is so difficult to deal with that, to overcome that. And the Uposatha, as an example, can help. Long no-fap streaks are also good, and you really want to remove the necessity of sexuality from your life. And the right view or stream entry are possible without full celibacy, but you can become negligent again, and it is much better to not rely too much on sexuality. Yeah, but anyway, next the Buddha talked about, or at least indirectly talked about, hygiene. Well, it is more or less a standard nowadays. That has not always been the case at many points in time. Just as I mentioned, in some cases, there are suttas about brushing your teeth, because that was not a standard at certain times. And many monks had bad teeth, as an example, because they were mainly eating white rice or something like that. And that is not too good for your dental hygiene. And hygiene is an essential part of the practice too, as your health will suffer otherwise. So it is directly connected to health, but still a good idea to look at that individually. And the Buddha did bathe regularly, and some ascetics at that time even believed that the purification of the mind happens through bathing. So they were bathing like 3 times a day or something like that. While that is obviously not true, there is a need for both dental and bodily hygiene in general. And it is a very bad idea to not take care of that. While there was not always access to clean water, as an example for ascetics, they still tried when they had access. And lastly, we talk about the only topic that does indeed get some attention in meditation communities, namely virtue, self-rules, you could call it like that. While this is not directly Dhamma, virtue is an essential part of the practice too, as we will not even notice that there is something wrong with our lifestyle if we never restrain ourselves in some way or another. Virtue just means that we control our emotional impulses of wanting something strongly and don't give in to them. People who appear virtuous are not born holy or something. They simply do not engage in all those behaviors that the masses radiate towards, which is hard to do, which is why they appear holy or saintly or something like that. And without that practice of emotional control, we will never notice how driven we are and how we simply cannot stop by will, even if we wanted to. That type of discipline and the ability to endure the resulting emotional pressure are essential and can be trained in many mundane ways. Any kind of practice or morning routine, something like that, that includes some degree of delay of gratification, is already training you to some degree in virtue. Everything that requires discipline is training you to some degree in virtue. Everything that is akin to working is also a kind of instant gratification delay, and is thus also to some degree at least related to virtue. So there are many ways how you can actually train your virtue, but all of them are kind of good. And all of them are based on the very same principle. They weaken your craving, and thus they are beneficial, because they move you closer to seeing a reality how it really is, and they make you suffer less. And a person who suffers less is more productive, and all kinds of other benefits are to be expected. But anyway, let us now come to the most important point. First, many early practices are different from more of the advanced practices and can look quite mundane. Yet those practices are the foundations that everything advanced stands upon. It is like building a house. You first have to do the foundation of the house and then can build upon. You don't want to just start with a roof or something like that, or the first story. That is impossible. You have to lay the groundwork. And do not neglect those things, or it is easy to fall away from concentration. If you remove the foundation for concentration, samadhi and jhana, then your jhanas and concentration and all the other things will crumble away. And Dhamma practice works incrementally, gradually, and one thing builds upon the other. Do not try to skip ahead. It will only lead to disaster, or at best temporary results, and then you have to go back and do everything that you have left out. Again, likely spend twice as much time, because you have also have to do your wrong views that you have accumulated, and then can start fresh and do things right and actually make progress. But anyway, this is enough for today. Thank you very much for watching. If you enjoy what I do, feel free to like and subscribe. But until then, I wish you a pleasant day and goodbye.